Hey guys, I know it's been a long time since I last did a video, and eventually I'm going to learn how to do edited videos. But for now, live streaming is just the easiest thing to me, and just for me to do. Anyway, during the pre-discussion for the last unpopular opinions, a topic came up that I thought was interesting and I wanted to address. And then today on Twitter, one of my followers pointed out that it had been a very long time since I streamed and asked, could I please do another? And I'm sorry it's been so long. So here's this. It's just going to be a short one tonight. You all know that I'm on Unpopular Opinions, Academic Agent streams, and we always get together beforehand to make sure that everybody's there, their mics are working and everything. And we were talking before last week's or this week's stream about Article 13, of course. And what some of the other people there were saying is we have to keep alt media going because we need somebody to report the stories that the mainstream media isn't reporting. Otherwise we just never hear about all these important things that are going on. And I said, and I made the point, I said, alt media doesn't talk about things that don't affect them either. And the others were like, wait, what are you talking about? And I said, Nicaragua. Have you heard what's going on in Nicaragua? And none of them had. They're all like, no, Nicaragua, that's a country, right? I mean, no, they knew where it was, but knew nothing about what's going on. And so, it frustrated me a little bit. And I said that, but for those who don't know, Nicaragua is a small country in Central America. It is, to my knowledge, the second poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, second only to Haiti. It's not well known. I think partly because it's the second poorest. Haiti, everybody knows because they're the poorest, because the missions go there all the time because it's in the news and people do talk about it. I guess, these poor people, I guess it's like talking about the poor children in Africa, but over here in the Americas rather than over there. And Nicaragua is not rich, so they don't have influence. They, as far as I know, they don't have a lot of oil or something, so it's not a country that the U.S. is going to want to go into. And the U.S. would get nothing out of it, basically. And alt media isn't going to get anything out of talking about it because it's not like Venezuela, where it was a rich country and now it is devastated due to socialism. Therefore, oh, look, this is proof that socialism is bad. It's also not a capitalist country that is flourishing and has been hit by a natural disaster. And, oh, look how capitalism is good. But, oh, bad things still happen, something like that. No, it's a poor nation and nobody's going to get anything out of talking about it. So nobody talks about it. And I think that's pretty sad. Anyway, the only way I know about it is that I am, through my business, I'm associated with a ministry that works down there. Most of you know, have been watching my streams, know that I do bookkeeping, and I do bookkeeping for all different sorts of companies. And I do bookkeeping for nonprofits, and there is a nonprofit that works down there. Now I'm going to be reading some of the information that the lady in charge of the nonprofit has been giving to their supporters, letting people know what's going on. I'm removing all names and identifying information because I haven't had a chance to talk to her about this. I would love to get her on stream to talk about it sometime, and I'm going to talk to her about it. Like I said, I'm not giving any names here just in case she says no, she's not interested. But I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to let people know what's going on down there. It just kind of in general, and kind of, I would like to bring this to the attention of the alt media and say, look, you people who are reporting on the stories that the mainstream media isn't reporting on because it doesn't benefit them, why aren't you reporting on stories that don't benefit you? And I know that's a little bit unfair. I know that they do report on stories that don't benefit them. But I don't know. It's just something that I wish more people would talk about because it's something that needs to be talked about. So anyway, just so that you know what is going on, or have a general idea, I'm just going to read through, as I said, some of what was sent out in their newsletter. She starts off, you probably haven't seen much in the news, but right now Nicaragua is experiencing the worst turmoil and violence since the 80s. In April, President Ortega unilaterally passed reforms to the Nicaraguan Social Security Institute, or the INSS, that raised the retirement age, increased required pay-ins, decreased benefits, and increased the tax burden on the elderly of Nicaragua. And by the way, I know a lot of you are thinking, wait, Elizabeth, you don't support any social programs, so what are you talking? So why are you upset? This is not what upsets me. And you're right, I don't support social programs. So before you clock out, just keep listening. This, in addition to various other recent controversies, sparked protests throughout the country that, over the course of a few days, quickly grew from a small group of elderly and students to include tens of thousands of citizens. President Ortega responded with extreme force, using riot police and his paramilitary gangs to attack the protesters. Many were killed, and the protests continued to grow in consequence. So far, human rights groups report... Oh, by the way, sorry, this is... I'm going to be reading through several newsletters, and I should have... I'm not the most organized person. This is from June, by the way. This is from May and June. This is not that recent. I'm going to go through more recent stuff soon. Anyway, so far human rights groups in June reported more than 200 dead, hundreds arrested without cause or missing, and more than 1,000 wounded. The situation in Managua and around the country has continued to escalate and has now become the largest unified movement of the Nicaraguan people since the revolution in the 1970s. This month, June, as the blockades continue, food prices are climbing, and it is becoming scarcer in the local community where they are. Again, names withheld. Fruits and vegetables are seeing the sharpest prices increase as produce sits in the trucks rotting at the blockades and can't get to the markets. It's increasingly difficult to get into Managua, that's the capital city, to make purchases of medicines and supplies. We continue to, they work medical stuff there. Sorry, I'm skipping over some of it. So this is not my inability to read. This is me editing it as I'm going. We will continue to offer medical care as long as it's safe to keep the clinic doors open, but we also need to face the reality that many in our community will soon be going hungry. Many people are losing their jobs because they are unable to travel to work. Those who have a bit of income are using it only for necessities like food, knowing that harder days are coming. This is causing businesses to close as they have no customers, leading to more folks losing their jobs, less income, less spending. You get the idea. It's a cycle that only gets worse and worse. There's talk among the protesters of a national strike if Ortega doesn't show signs of leaving soon. This would soon mean gas stations with no gas, grocery stores with no food, and eventually the loss of running water, electricity, internet, and so on. We're praying that it doesn't come to that eventuality, but trying to be wise in preparing for whatever may come. So that was what was going on in June. And hi, Avinash. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but hello to you too. So then in July, the next update. In our last newsletter, I referenced the worsening crisis in Nicaragua and how it was impacting our community. Many have lost their jobs and have little chance of finding a new one until the socio-political situation stabilizes. Food prices are increasing and availability is often limited as supply trucks are held up at the road blockade set up by protesters. Since my last letter, things have only worsened. After 75 days of protests, the death count now stands at 285, with more than 2,500 wounded, and 50 arbitrary arrests of protesters just this last weekend, and many more missing and believed to be either secretly arrested or killed. We are educating local news in their local community there. We are educating the community on several levels. Our psychologist on staff is dealing with those traumatized by the violence that they're witnessing and giving group lectures on ways to help children deal with the violence that they're seeing on the news and hearing around them. Many children are staying home from school out of fear. The psychologist is speaking with teens about how to handle the stress in several areas. It's just, try to imagine those of us in the first world, how, I don't know, we hear about protests, we hear about revolutions and all of that, but most of us living today can't actually imagine it because we've never been there. We've never seen it. It's, I don't know. It's pretty horrific. And I wish I could read the whole thing to you because she goes into personal stories of things that are going down there. She has pictures and everything. But again, I'm not going to give any details without her permission. I would love to, I'd love to have her on a stream later and may be able to do that. Okay, continuing on, another newsletter that she released in late July. The situation in Nicaragua continues to deteriorate day by day. Ortega is resorting to worse brutality, killing adults and children alike, posting snipers on housetops to shoot unarmed civilians, threatening to loot and burn opposition business owners' properties, and even reportedly bringing in Cuban special ops forces to bolster his, quote, death squads, unquote. At least 10 more died over the weekend, 4 police and 6 civilians, 2 of them children. There are so many numbers, but try to picture the families and individuals affected when you read them. The numbers above are from the Nicaraguan Pro-Human Rights Organization and were reported last week. The numbers are higher now after the weekend's violence. 351 are dead in a nation with a population of just over 6 million. To put it into perspective, I've been told that that's roughly the equivalent of 19,111 dead in a country the size of the USA. All these lost jobs translate into a lot of hungry people. And again, then she goes on, like I said, to give personal stories, and now I'm actually looking at the pictures and everything, and it's rough. I've been down to Nicaragua myself several times, and just over the years. I haven't been down in the last couple of years, but I know some of the people down there, and when I read these, and she'll put pictures in there, and these are people I've met, some of them, and it's again, I think it's something it's hard to imagine. If you've never been to the third world, if you've never visited the third world country, you definitely should. If you live in the first world and you've never seen this, if you've seeing pictures, seeing videos and hearing the stories, that's one thing. But until you've actually been down there and experienced it, you can't really imagine it. And those who follow me, especially those who listen to me on AA stream, I mean, a lot of people would say I'm completely heartless. Although somebody was saying that I was making emotional arguments when I was talking about Down syndrome people. And I'm like, I brought them up because nobody will debate that they have a high IQ. I mean, everybody knows if you have Down syndrome, you have an incredibly low IQ. I wasn't making an emotional argument, so that was silly. Most people though would say I'm kind of, I wouldn't say heartless, but that I'm pretty cold. I'm not very emotional when it comes to things. And I'm not. But reading about this, and I think it's partly because I've been down there, because I've met the people, because it's a lot more real to me. And reading over the last newsletter, I was actually crying reading some of this. And again, I'm not gonna be able to give you the details. I'm gonna be skipping over those. I intend to repeat myself a lot, but again, I'm gonna see if I can get the lady who works down there or has worked down there. She's actually back in the States now. It's not safe for Americans to be down there right now. That's one danger too. If you're down in the third world, whenever things get violent like this, if you have white skin, everybody assumes you have money. So you're not safe when things get dangerous like this. Anyway, we'll see if that happens. If that works, it would be wonderful. I mean, if she can come on stream sometime, that would be great. So this is the most recent update. This is from August. Excuse me. Nicaragua continues to be in a state of unrest, though the streets are quieter for now. The protest march continue along with countermarched by the state workers obligated to support President Ortega. The streets are empty in the evenings as the, quote, disappearing, unquote, of protesters continues. Those kidnapped by paramilitary forces usually appear later in the prisons or the morgues. Targeting of both opposition leaders and the average protester has led to many fleeing the country. Neighboring Costa Rica has seen a flood of Nicaraguan immigrants, legal and illegal, seeking refuge. Although violence is diminishing, the repression continues in different forms. Police are often seen photographing protesters, and once identified, they are targeted by their Sandinista neighbors, the paramilitary mobs, and the police. And for those unfamiliar, the Sandinistas are the political party in power right now. President Ortega is the head of the Sandinistas. So, we have the Republicans and the Democrats in America. You've got the Tories and Labor over in the UK. You have the Sandinistas, and during the Nicaraguan Civil War, I think it was the Sandinistas versus the Contras. I'm not totally sure on that. I don't know who the other side is, or actually, I think there might be multiple down there. Don't quote me on that. All I know is Sandinista is the party in power. Anyway, police are answering demands for justice for the police slaying of peaceful protesters by charging other protesters with the crimes. The state-controlled courts are going along with the charade and convicting peaceful protesters with terrorism, arms trafficking, and murder, even when the victims' families are pointing to the police as the killers. Can you imagine being stopped by the police and your car searched, your cell phone confiscated, social media posts reviewed, and possibly being arrested without justification simply for flying the national flag on your car or posting a comment critical of the president? More than 240 health workers, doctors, nurses, aides, laboratory workers have been fired from public hospitals for supporting the protests or attending to the wounded. Volunteer firemen, human rights watchers, newspaper and TV reporters are being persecuted, harassed, and threatened to not do their jobs. The head of one human rights group in Nicaragua has fled the country due to death threats he received after reporting the government abuse. The UN issued a report criticizing the government's, quote, excessive use of force, unquote, and Ortega, the president, responded by expelling the UN delegation from Nicaragua and labeling the UN's Human Rights Council as, quote, an instrument of terror and lies, unquote. And then she goes on to, like I say, give personal or individual examples and a lot more information that I'm not going to be going into here. Wish I could. So the point of this video is twofold. I think the main, well, with other smaller things, obviously one, I haven't done a video in a while. Excuse me, I've got a baby dragon who, hey, sits. She likes to sit under my, or in my sweater to keep warm. Come here, hey, excuse me. She was sleeping. Oh, yes, I'm sorry I haven't been on Discord. Looking at the chat, I'm sorry. I know I need to get on Discord. Life has been really, really crazy for the last month and a half. And I know I need to get back on Discord. But anyway, back to so that is one reason I'm doing the video, is I just haven't done one in so long. And somebody was so sweet. Who was it? Bullet Bill, I'm not sure, on Twitter just said, oh, please, pretty please with sugar on top. And yeah, anybody who knows me knows I'm a sucker for sweets. I love almost anything sweet. But so that was sweet that he was asking me to please make another video. So yeah, that's kind of the smallest reason. A larger reason, I think the biggest reason is just, I wish more people knew about what was going on in Nicaragua. I wish more people would talk about it. And so I wanted to do that just to kind of bring this to the attention of at least some people. And a secondary reason is it has bothered me that nobody's talking about it, but that conversation mainly with Not So Obvious and I guess Shinobi, we were talking before the unpopular opinion stream. And they said, yeah, oh, alt media is there to talk about the news that the mainstream media won't talk about. And I started wondering, I'm like, well, why aren't they talking about Nicaragua? Why is nobody talking about Nicaragua? You will see individuals here and there on Facebook or occasionally on Twitter or whatever, and I'll sometimes post, hey. So, she's still young, so she kind of gets in the way sometimes. Or I'm not, she gets into mischief sometimes. Stay here. I lost my train of thought. You're distracting. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So I started asking myself, I'm like, why is nobody talking about it? And it did hit me. I'm like, why did the mainstream media talk about things? They talk about things because they're going to, generally speaking, that they're going to gain from. Somebody once said that when you see, at least in the US, if you see news of a woman who killed her children and is being tried for it, it's always going to be some pretty white woman. You're never going to see it if it's somebody who's ugly or if it's somebody who's poor or, somebody who's not important, even though that happens. And it's because that's not going to sell newspapers. When you see things, terror and all of that happening, or when the mainstream media talks about it, it's because it's going to get them, it pushes their narrative. If a white man goes into a school and shoots up a bunch of kids, oh, that's going to be all over the news everywhere. If a Muslim bombs a place, that might hit the news. It depends. It depends on which news outlet. If it doesn't fit their narrative, they're not going to talk about it. And I started thinking about it, and it seems to be the case that, stop it. She's very distracting right now. It seems to be the case that the alternative media does the same thing. They'll talk about it if it's feminists are doing something that affects gamers, or the social justice warriors are attacking white men, or some socialist nation is, pushing socialism. communists are on the rise, anarchists are on the rise. If it affects them, or it's a subject that is just, oh, it's really interesting to them, they'll talk about it. But if it's something like this, where hundreds of people are dying, a country is in great distress, the government is being incredibly oppressive, just, I mean, doing horrible things, well, it doesn't fit any of our narratives. We're not going to gain anything by talking about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that that's why nobody's talking about it, but I can't help but feel that might be the reason. I know one reason. A lot of people are not talking about it because they don't know about it. I don't know. I guess I can't believe that nobody has heard anything, but I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, if it's just, oh, nobody's talking about it because nobody knows about it, then here's my challenge. I know that big YouTubers don't watch my videos, but smaller ones do. Some people do. And I guess I'd like to know. If you're not talking about it because you don't know about it, okay, now you know about it. Go do some research. Feel free to contact me. If those who have my contact info, and I guess I should put I'll try to put my Twitter handle down in the in the description. And yes, I'm on Discord when I think about it and I need to get back on. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's all. Just a short stream tonight. Looking at the chat, people who kill their children are ugly. Yes, they absolutely are. But the fact is, the most successful serial killers are attractive because they can get away with it. And you have physically attractive people who commit horrific crimes. And those are the ones the media like to display. Go figure. Anyway, that's all for tonight. I need to get her back in her pen. But that's all for tonight. I am going to try to get back to streaming more regularly. I have a bunch of actual political things I want to talk about and that I'd like to get into. I should have my other dragons on stream sometime. They're a lot more docile. They actually know how to sit still. She's going to grow up one day. Anyway, hope you guys have a good evening and pay attention to what's going on down there in Central America. And yeah, you will see individuals talking about this, like on Facebook and on Twitter on occasion. And I guess I would say take notice. And I hate to say educate yourself, but let's not ignore what's going on. Good night, everyone.